And then, after about an hour of this kind of conversation, rather intimate, warm conversation, suddenly Paddy changed conversational gear. And as an old politician, I recognized the gear he changed into. It was what politicians call a vote of thanks type speech, because he cleared his throat. He said, Jono, on behalf of the lads, I'd really like to thank you for these letters you've been writing for me and other people. And to show you how much I appreciate it, I've decided to give you a present. The present I'm going to give you is you can have, free of charge, mind you, you can have anything you like to choose from my library. And then he dived on the left-hand side of his bed and started rummaging around a tatty old cardboard box. And as he was rummaging, I wondered from what, learned tome, what presentational volume is going to come out from underneath the bed of a man who can't read or write. And we finally rummaged them up. And out came, and he spread them out in front of me, an amazing selection of hardcore porn magazines. And after a fleeting moment of temptation, I said, thanks, but no thanks, Paddy. But I just said it in a sort of tone of voice which was reverting to my old personality as a pompous politician. Because there was something about the way I said it that made Paddy flare up with great anger. And he said, oh, sneering at me, are you judging me, are you looking down on me? And anyway, I tried to intervene with this sort of stream of invective. And then he stopped himself with the most original idea of why I might have said no thank you. And he stopped, oh, he said, and if it's boys you're after. So I said, no, it's not, I used to like those first kind of magazines. And he said, why you said no thank you then? I said, well, I was rather embarrassed to say this. And I said, well, if you really want to know, I'm trying a different path in life. Oh, what kind of path would that be then? So I said, well, if you really want to know, it's the path of having a faith. It's the path of believing in Jesus. I tell you, it would take a long time to get round to the hero of the story. It's a path of believing, and he enters it in rather unpromising circumstances. His porn magazine it's a path of faith. It's a path of believing in Jesus. It's a path of trying to follow his commandments and teachings, and that's the path I'm on these days. And it's changing my life. And suddenly there was a silence in that cell. I always remember that silence. It was sort of long, deep, and meaningful silence. And after a long, long pause, it was broken by Paddy, who said something totally unexpected. And what he said was this. He said, I'd really like to try that path myself. And then before I could say anything much, a kind of floodgates burst open inside him, and out poured an avalanche of sort of questions, flashes of anger, but it was sort of muddled. But you could actually hear this in the most respectable parts of Brixton, apart from inside Brixton Prison, because the kind of things he was saying was this. He said, well, I don't understand what life's all about. I don't know what it means. It doesn't seem to work very well. If it did, I wouldn't be in here. My relationships don't work, some seem to work. Even when I got money in my pocket, of course he had an original way of getting it, but even so, even when I got money in my pocket, it doesn't work. I don't know what life's all about. I don't know what it means. I don't know what happens when we die. I don't sort of know how to steer in life. And then he said, but my Nan, she used to believe in all that Jesus stuff, and she sort of understood the meaning of life. And I've been watching you since you came in here, and you seem to know something about what it all means. So what does it all mean? And if there is a path, how do I get on the path? Will you help me get on the path? How do I get on the path? That's what he said. Well, there was another silence in that. So, because I really didn't want to help him. The last thing I wanted to be some sort of preacher. But finally I said rather reluctantly, I said, well, Paddy, the way I sort of got on this path, that people started to pray with me. And they said, oh, will you pray with me? So I said, all right. And I had moved some way since I thought that praying out loud was worse than going to the dentist without an anaesthetic. I'd moved on a bit. So I did pray with him. First night, second night, third night, fourth night, fifth night. And then Paddy started to say things like, oh, this stuff's too good just to keep to the two of us. And I thought he meant he was going to bring in another Irish burglar to make our twosome a threesome. But Paddy was a young man of tremendous drive and energy, and indeed he would have made a good recruiting sergeant in the army in a different era, because he rushed around the jail recruiting. And before we knew what had happened, he brought in a lot of very original recruits. He brought in a blagger, who's some of you know is an armed robber. He brought in a kiter, who's an exotic kind of fraudster. He brought in a blower who cracked safes for a living. He brought in a couple more Irish burglars, a couple of lifers. And before we knew where we were, we had a most unusual prayer group up and running. It gave a completely new meaning to the Christian term, a cell group. And being more serious for a moment, I'd like to tell you what happened in that cell group. Let me quickly say that I was not the leader of it. I was its greatest learner, greatest beneficiary. And the way I remember what happened, just my way of remembering it, that the key things all began with the letter P. That's my after-the-event memory, but I'll just take you through them. Word number one beginning with P was pain. Now, of course, everyone has pain in their life. Sometimes it's deserved pain because of our own sins and mistakes. Sometimes it's completely undeserved pain, bereavement, broken relationships, illness, whatever it may be. But we all go through pain. How we go through pain is very, very important. Looking back on it, I think that we prisoners in that jail were, in some ways, a bit lucky. Because we couldn't possibly, if we were going to be realistic and truthful, handle our pain the way most people in respectable society handle their pain. Because the way an awful lot of people handle their pain is to sort of pretend it's not happening at all. They deny it. They conceal it. They bury it. They do the kind of things our culture teaches us to do, which is keep a stiff upper lip, be a man, carry on, pack up your troubles or old kit bag and smile, 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 that sort of thing. But we prisoners, for all the bad things we'd all done, nothing much more obviously in pain than a whole lot of men dressed up in prison uniform going through the misery of incarceration. So we didn't stop at the, be in denial, pretend it's not happening stage. We leapt over that hurdle very fast. And then we started, which was the purpose of it all, which is to pray. What is prayer? I've heard it in every imaginable language, phraseology, inarticulate, articulate. But in the end, it's opening up a channel of listening and communicating with God, just like that girl in the miniskirt said in the lecture in the Alpha course. And when you start to do that, things happen. And you must, of course, be persistent and patient, to other words. A lot of people, especially in jail, think that prayer is some sort of shot of holy electrical energy which will come down and solve your problems immediately. But it doesn't sort of do that always. You have to be patient. You have to wrestle with some of the facts of prayer life, which is God's timing is not always your timing. Prayers are sometimes unanswered for reasons we don't understand. It's not necessarily an easy road, but praying is very, very important. One of the first things you realize when you're on a journey of this kind is the importance of penitence, or to use another word, repentance. And that's difficult for lots of people. What is repentance? I sometimes think our English language fails us a bit at this point, because I think the word repentance, if you sort of think, what do people associate with repentance? They associate sort of saying sorry all over again, repeatedly, maybe standing in the corner, in old days wearing sackcloth and ashes. It's all got rather negative connotations. But in the original Greek language, which the Gospels are written in, the word for repentance is metanoia, which literally means meta, a change, noia of mind. Best translated as a change of heart and mind, a sort of big change. And that's what repentance is really all about.